Welcome to the Finer Things podcast. I'm Nick, and this is
Ahmed.
This is the show where we feature 2 beverages, 2 cigars, and table 2 topics.
Let's see how fine they are. How's it going, guys? So today for the Finer Things podcast. Well, first off, episode number 1. Very excited.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. This is definitely sort of supposed to be one of the more conversational pieces. So like we had said in the opening, we're going to feature a total of 2 beverages, 2 cigars, talk about 2 things, and, give our ideas, opinions, and do some stupid rambling. We're going to drink a good amount.
Yeah, yep, that is true. Drink a good amount, smoke a good amount. So,
yes.
Good.
So the first beverage we're going to feature, why don't you go ahead and introduce it, Nick?
So, this guy right here is a...
glass of water.
Thank you. Yes, this is a glass of water. I was getting to the bottle, though. This is a Gosset, and vintage is 2012, and it is a champagne. Now, for those who confuse this with, let's say, the barefoot champagne that you can get at the
or even
liquor store.
Sparkling wine,
right.
Or not to say that those aren't good.
No, certainly
Prosecco.
not. But to say, Prosecco, Cava, very similar to champagne, made in the same exact style, but they come from different areas of the world. So Champagne in particular comes from the Champagne growing region of France. Other sparkling wines do not come from that area of France. For example, Prosecco, that comes from Italy. Cava comes from Spain. Champagne is a very particular growing region in France. Legally, to be called Champagne, it has to come from there. Most champagnes are known for kind of chalky consistency to their flavor, and some of the nicer ones can get very complex.
Particularly vintages have, in my opinion, a marquee sort of must.
Yes.
Marquee sort of funk.
Yep.
That is...
Funk, that's a very good word.
Yeah, and that's what, makes it such an interesting thing on the palate.
Yes.
As opposed to just a tasty wine.
Yep.
Or even just a tasty sparkling wine.
Oh, and you know where that that chalkiness kind of comes from is the limestone. That is the very, very strong amounts of limestone in the Champagne growing region of France, and that's why they get that sort of consistency to them. So this will be very interesting for us to give a taste. Give that an open.
Well, the other thing I was going to say is we do have our first topic to introduce. Do you have your notes on hand?
Well, first topic. I have to go get my notes.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, pop off.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead and start peeling the foil off of this guy. Nice and easy. We do. I guess so. Before I open that, we can go ahead and introduce one of my favorite cigars. The cigar that introduced me to the world of cigars, at least as what I'll call a critical smoker. Great friend I made at the ever fantastic Ashton cigar bar in Philadelphia. I told him I did not smoke very much. You want to hand me those cigars? Told him I didn't smoke much. Asked him what he would recommend to pair with my drink, which was the Balvenie Caribbean Cask 14. And he recommended this to me. And I absolutely fell in love. Love how it paired with my Balvenie. And sorry about that. And yeah, it's been a one of my go-tos for a while. Ashton, and he didn't work there. It just happened to be an Ashton cigar he recommended in the Ashton cigar bar. But it's a medium sort of flavor, Not a particularly huge, ring gauge there, but still very tasty. And why I actually really sort of picked this as something we might pair with champagne is because, yes, obviously it has the traditional sort of bite of tobacco and smoke, but it's not a particularly huge flavor. It's smooth, it's buttery, it's very nutty,
Yes.
and I think it's going to go well.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Why don't we go ahead and get this guy unscrewed? Who's going to do the honors here?
I can do it.
Fair enough. Look at that.
Yep.
Guy's been sitting for a while, huh?
Yep. Just hand that to
Yep.
me real quick. You always want to keep your hand over the cork because it has a risk of just popping out and causing a big mess everywhere. So always a very careful undoing here of the cork, because otherwise you could have a
Big
little
mess.
bit of a mess. Yeah.
What's
We don't
that
want
you told me once? It should sound like the
Oh yes,
whisper of a French woman?
yes.
Something like
A French woman whispering
Yeah.
is what it should sound like when you open up a champagne bottle. I don't know if we'll be that successful today, but we will certainly give it a try.
No champagne sabering today?
Oh no, I'm afraid not.
Oh,
I suppose I could learn to do that with the CD. Oh no! Learn to do that with the CD. Oh no! Learn to do that with the CD. Oh no!
All right, guys, we are back after a little champagne difficulty. Once in a while, when a champagne has been sitting in its bottle, gosh, look how carbonated that is. For a number of years, that's just gorgeous. And maybe was opened with not the most nuance in the world. Long story short, I'm a little sticky and I'm a little wet. But we're going to carry on. We're going to have an awesome time because that's what we do. The idea of this show is a look in on a conversation with just a couple of enthusiasts of the finer things. These are the kind of things we do together anyway. So let's get these cigars lit.
Absolutely.
Do you want me to do yours?
That'd be great.
Okay.
So, when it comes to champagne flutes, they were actually the big reason to use them as opposed to, let's say, a bulbous glass, like my water glass. Here's a very bulbous glass. It kind of concentrates the nose. Here with the champagne glass, being able to use a flute allows you to better observe the bubbles and the behavior of the champagne's natural carbonation, which, by the way, is not carbonated like a soda. Instead, what they do is they put some grapes in a bottle and let it ferment and for about a year, and the next year they'll come back and they'll add extra juice, this fresh kind of runoff juice to the mix with some extra yeast and have it sit. And as it sits and sits and sits, it builds pressure. Hence why you get the bubbles in champagne. That is a tasty cigar.
It's subtle, but it's a nice big flavor. Does not beat you up. Very
Smokable.
smooth, pleasant smoke.
Definitely. I've had plenty of cigars that are rough and kind of beat you up. This doesn't do that. It's very light and smooth. This is the Ashton cabinet number 4.
Ashton cabinet number 4, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Churchill size, I believe.
Definitely a respectable size there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. Just a respectable cigar in general. Definitely good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Let's give this beauty a taste. Cheers.
Prost. That's a nice champagne flavor there. It's a little sour.
Yeah.
It's
light.
I shouldn't even say sour. Tartness is probably a better word. Toward the back of the palate, it is definitely light compared to some of the red wines that we've had recently.
I would say light compared even to like a like a Dom Perignon. That's a more musty flavor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, certainly similar to that. And the cigar, it's a similarly light sort of sensation. I almost feel like the champagne takes over the cigar a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
When you're smoking it, it tastes great and bold. But after a moment, it does just dissipate.
It kind of fades away pretty quick. Whereas the champagne has more staying power. That was a surprise. I would have thought that the cigar would have been
overpowered.
And isn't that funny? The lady at the liquor store who was saying, "Oh, champagne and cigar."
Yeah. Oh, what about a whiskey?
Yeah.
Hey, look, I've done whiskey and cigars. A lot of people have done whiskey and cigars.
No, if we tried a whiskey with this, it would have kicked its ass.
Yeah, this would fall apart.
It would not.
Although it did pair relatively well with the Caribbean Cask 14, which is not the most in-your-face flavor in the world. A little more refined. A little more laid back.
I've had the Caribbean Cask. That's good stuff. Good stuff indeed. And of course, this cigar is just warming up, so we're good there.
But our first topic.
Yes, our first topic of conversation: the Audiophile Lexicon.
Just the audiophile words that people like us, who are hi-fi audiophile enthusiasts, what words do we use to describe sound? Yes. How do we explain the things we like and or don't like about the reproduction of music, the sound of music on different systems?
Sure.
Perhaps turn that heat on.
It is on.
Oh. Huh.
You cold?
No, I just don't want to get...
Oh, yeah, no, it is on. We're good. So, anyhow, we have a nice long list of different terms to discuss here.
Let's
so we can kind of go through those there.
We sat down the other day and just banged through a bunch of different words that we thought maybe needed a little clarification or just that are important. So these are in no particular order. They've got no sort of particular. Is this a complete list?
That's the complete list.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
No particular order, no particular relation to one another. Sometimes there are, and that'll be obvious. So the first word we've got here is boomy. So Nick and I define that as incoherent bass caused by the speaker, room, or the placement of the speaker in the room.
Yes, correct. Some speakers on their own, even in an anechoic chamber, can be quite boomy. But then when you place the speaker in the room, like if you place speakers very close to the rear wall, they have the tendency to accentuate bass frequencies at the expense of resolution, which was another term that we'll get to further down the list there. But essentially, not only is there more bass than there should be, but it is less coherent, less precise
than it should be.
Correct.
Yeah. The next word up was warm. So we define that as organic, rounded, tubby, soft, and forgiving.
Yes.
So yeah, different sounds, or different sort of audio products are going to be able to reproduce a warmer sound than others.
Try your champagne after the cigar.
I have a little bit, honestly. I haven't thought about it too much. Whoa.
Yeah.
I'm getting like the vanilla from the cigar. But also...
You still get the fruit from the champagne.
Yeah, I got a lot of big, tart fruitness.
Yep. And sour
and
apple.
A little bit of that. Sour apple, 100%.
Yeah.
And a little bit of like musty.
Oh, definitely. The must, like at the top of the palate.
The funk was not so much there before. And again, maybe that's because of this, breathing a little bit because of the cigar.
Yeah.
But pairing well nonetheless.
Yes, indeed.
So, different products provide different degrees of warmth. That organic sort of sound. That sort of, forgiving is a good, a good way to
certainly
describe it. Soft, can be tubby. I feel like that's a little bit negative.
Well,
maybe
yeah,
if it's overly warm.
Right, if something is too warm.
Yeah.
And with warm and then our next term cold, those are just descriptors, and it's basically on a scale.
Super common words in the audiophile community.
Right. Very, very common. And there's warm in a good way, and then there's too warm where it's not good, where the bass becomes woolly, it becomes tubby, as Ahmed was saying, and the highs are very, very rolled off in comparison to what you hear the lows as. The warm sound, I kind of attribute it with an organic kind of sound.
Yep.
It
lends itself well to a more live sound. Live being another word we're going to cover later.
Yes.
Let's.
We should cover cold. We should
just
jump.
Cold.
Yeah, it's the next one on the list anyway.
A synonym might be another word we're going to use. Analytical.
Yes.
But what we've described cold as is lifeless, edgy, harsh, can be ear piercing, dry, sort of shrill. Like a certain, a really cold sound is something that will be peaky, that makes you wince or cringe a little when listening with some volume.
Ears to listen to.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, like something that's hitting a little too hard, and not in a punch way, but in a piercing way.
Yes.
And
however, it's the opposite of warm, right?
Yeah.
There's obviously a balance between these two, but with the cold sound, it is hard. It is lifeless. Perhaps not as dimensional as the warm sound.
And again, it's not to say that one is better than the other. It's just to say necessarily that, and oftentimes you want to combine them, right?
Yes.
Get a real warm speaker.
You want to achieve that balance.
Yeah, you want to achieve the balance. If you're too warm, we get boomy a lot of times. We get woolly, another word we'll cover.
Yep.
If you're too cold, though, you get harsh. You get uncomfortable. Too warm, I almost always prefer to too cold.
Yes.
Because too warm is at least typically fun.
Yep.
Too cold is like, I can't listen at loud volumes. I can't listen for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Some of the very first solid-state amplifiers were classified as very cold. I typically use a 1 to 10 scale, where 1 is very, very cold and 10 is very, very warm, and 5, of course, being dead neutral. And some of the first solid-state amps were 2s or 3s, like very cold, very displeasing to listen to, in my humble opinion, anyway.
The fruit plays really nicely with a cigar.
It certainly does.
Yeah, the tartness with the sort of like buttery, like don't want to say meatiness, but almost fattiness.
There is. It's like that umami.
Yep, with a cigar, and the tartness sort of drums that up.
It does.
It's like lemon cutting through fat.
Yep.
Like that type of thing. Acidity cutting through fat. And the acidity
of the champagne
is playing, sort of swirling with the umami of the cigar.
It is. The acidity almost sits at a lower level on the tongue, and the fat, as it were, sits a bit higher up. That's just what I'm sensing anyway. But
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. So
next,
analytical. Again, in relation to cold.
Yep.
Revealing, detailed, exacting, coarse, unforgiving. Really similar to cold. Things that are too cold are analytical. Things that are analytical generally are cold. Now, again, an analytical amp oftentimes is an awesome thing.
It can be.
An analytical speaker can be an awesome thing, but they can also both
Mark
be bad.
Levinson amplifiers, for example,
Really
very analytical stuff.
They, for example, like we've heard them with the Martin Logan Neelitz at the New York Audio Show.
Yes, we did.
A few times.
Yep.
And they do give a huge sense of soundstage because of the size of the panel, of course.
They do.
But also a lot of precision from that Levinson gear.
And there was good dynamics, of course. With the Levinson.
However, what I would say is, could you have achieved a more fun, lively sound if you introduce some warm electronics to that setup? 100%.
Absolutely.
And this is all a subjective, not objective thing. These are only objective descriptions for the most part of what something sounds like.
Yes.
Just based off kind of a frequency response, as well as just a tone.
Yes.
But they're all just things you use to describe things. They're not really, most of the things we've covered so far are not indicators of a superiority or inferiority.
No, they're really just descriptors. Again,
And that's the same for most of these.
Yeah, absolutely. You could have, for example, a speaker that is quite cold and a speaker that is quite warm, and have them perform at the same level overall. They just might have cold or warm tendencies one way or the other.
I'm getting that extreme funk right now. I hadn't taken a puff of the cigar for a little while, and I took a sip of the champagne. Funk. And we use that word a lot. But,
yeah, we do use the word funk a lot.
It's groovy, man. But
totally rad.
Totally rad. I think groovy's older.
Groovy,
rad.
Yeah,
Rad's like a '90s thing.
Is it?
I think rad's a '90s thing, but groovy is like
an '80s thing.
'70s.
70s?
Yeah, I think. I don't know. I'm talking out of my ass. But what is it called? Sorry, put that away. Tia's texting me too much. Next word, laid back. And good kind of descriptor of the vocals of the Kef Blades. Yes. Which we did have the opportunity to listen to earlier.
Yes, we did have a listen to those. Powered by Marantz Reference Electronics.
Yeah. Great speaker. But laid back. So, I feel like I often attribute this to as a descriptor for vocal performances in reproductions of speakers. Okay. But definitely in general. Yep. Again, there are objective things. Like, for the most part, like big, like Tannoy or Klipsch type speakers tend to be more laid back than Bowers Diamonds. Sure. That type of thing.
The B&W Diamonds are very forward. Yeah. And it typically refers to the high frequency response of the speaker. The Bowers Wilkins being forward. It means that the highs are more present. They're more there.
Don't want the trip.
Yes. Whereas being laid back, they're kind of recessed. They're not going to be as in your face. Sometimes that is very pleasing to the ear. That can be a very pleasing sort of sound. Whereas, forward sometimes might not be. But sometimes, depending on the recording, you might want to hear those details in the upper frequencies, and the speakers that are laid back simply aren't providing that.
So, we've kind of already touched upon them, so I think we'll kind of bundle these two together. Forward, opposite of laid back.
Yes.
In your face. What are they? Present, which is the next word.
Yes.
Music that feels like it's in the room. Not necessarily live. Live, I think, is a different sound. Okay. Live, and again, that's a word we have later. Yep. Feels as though it's a real life live venue. Yes. As opposed to me, where present, I think all live music is present.
You're saying live sort of music.
All live sounding music, I think, is present, but not all present sounds are necessarily live. Oh, it could be a present reproduction of a studio recording. That's at least how I use the term. Now, again, guys, if you agree, if you disagree, if you knew something, if you didn't know something, hop down in the comments. Let us know. Let's have a conversation. That's what the point of this podcast is a conversation, to share the type of conversations and the type of hanging out and the type of fun that we do anyway. Yeah. But making some, what we think is cool, fun content out of it. I'm just so much funk and must right now on the palate, just sitting. It's
oh yeah,
it's really enjoyable. That's these both linger, especially the champagne, but
they do.
But the cigar too does. Yeah, linger.
The cigar does have a nice finish to it. Real tasty pairing.
100%. We made some good choices. We are so smart.
I think this was recommended to us.
We are so. Oh my god. The intelligence in this room.
Very little. Very, very little. Oh gosh.
So, forward, present, imaging. relates to soundstage, but essentially imaging is individual sort of placement.
Yes.
And not necessarily separation. I think that has to do more with coherency.
But accurately placing these
accurately
sound sources
placing,
where they should be.
Exactly. Accurately placing sounds from the angles that they really would be, sort of radiating from. Anyhow, coherency. Coherency is not, a speaker doesn't have to image well to have coherency. And a speaker does not have to have a ton of coherency to image well.
Sure.
I think...
coherency is really that separation of each individual sound, whereas imaging is placing it properly.
On
so
the
you could have a speaker that is not properly placing the sounds, but each of the sounds are distinct and coherent. You can tell one from another. Whereas imaging, you could have things where they're supposed to be. A drum off to the left, vocals in the middle, and a violin to the right, or whatever it might be. And you could have a speaker that places those properly, but ultimately it's very indistinct as far as the sound. Whereas with coherence, rather, if I had both imaging and coherence, for that matter, then I would have sound sources that are placed properly along the soundstage, and also I could very distinctly identify each of those sounds. I think that would be my definition of that.
Yeah. And then sound staging. Well, it sounds like what it is, right? Yep. Where the instruments or sources of music are placed within the sound. How a speaker sort of projects the actual sort of size, what the musicians and the music engineers, sound engineers, were after when designing a soundstage, whether it's live recording or studio recording. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Hi-fi.
It's a big term.
Yeah.
Yeah. High fidelity sound is...
We've defined it here as... Now I'll say this relates to components. Hi-fi components are components that make an active effort to bring you closer to the music.
Yes.
Does that mean they're really expensive?
No.
Can they be really cheap?
Yeah, of course they can.
Exactly. That, just because something is hi-fi doesn't mean it's a world-class product. Just because something is cheap, though, doesn't mean it's not hi-fi.
Very true.
However, there are extremely expensive things with the sole purpose of bringing you closer to the music. So those are no less hi-fi either.
Absolutely not.
But I like the idea that, to be going after hi-fi, you don't have to be spending $1 million. I for Christmas, I'm trying to get my niece to get into hi-fi. I know I sent you a picture.
Yeah, you did.
I got her a pair of ELAC Debut 6.2s, and just a little 2-channel Bluetooth Sony receiver, STR DH90 or something like that. I got the whole setup for like a few $100. And I'm hoping she's enjoying it. I'm hoping that she's having fun with it. Because to me, it's something beautiful. It's cool to think about whether or not your gear is bringing you closer to the music.
Well, that's very true. Certainly some of my gear brings me closer to my music than other parts of my gear. Over time I've graduated from one particular level to the next. And what was all of it hi-fi gear? Yeah, it was all high fidelity gear in the effort of getting closer to the artist that's performing on the stage to bring them into your room. But having said that, they all achieved that goal for the amount of money that they charge. Really big thing there. So our next term is to be. Tubey refers to the classic sound of vacuum tube electronics. Very warm, very organic, and perhaps kind of laid back in the more extreme of circumstances. And the vacuum tube sound, another great descriptor for it is liquid, it's very fluid presentation.
Organic,
really, yes.
rolled off.
Yes.
Unsharpened.
Yes, not over sharpened, I suppose, is really the big thing with the tubey sort of sound, and that's why a lot of people go after that sort of sound, because it can be very pleasant to the ear. It can be nostalgic, because vacuum tube electronics are typically older than solid state. They came around before solid state electronics, so it's nostalgic to certain people,
and not necessarily really analytical.
No, not necessarily, but it can be.
Yep.
There are certain vacuum tube, especially preamplifiers, I find, that can be quite analytical, and really nuanced, and really say, okay, well, you're going to hear absolutely everything that is in this musical track.
Yeah.
To be fair, the next term that we have is decay. That's referring to essentially sound reverberation as the sound is produced versus dying off, and that the act of dying off, that is decay. It's essentially that we want a nice long natural sort of decay of sound. We don't want it to be so aggressive that it just stops as if it were over dampened, but at the same time we don't want it reverberating forever either. So decay is a particular term we use.
Most of these things are really, the ideal way that any of these, rather, the ideal reproduction of most of these ideas would be to make things sound like they do. That's pretty much the point.
Yeah.
You want a natural amount of decay. You want a natural amount of bass. You want a natural sort of, tubey sounds a little different because most things naturally sound like that.
Yeah. But and tubey is again a descriptor that kind of goes along with warm, and typically not the cold sound anyway. But yes, having the right balance is definitely key when it comes to making a hi-fi system that is ultimately a realistic sounding system, but also something that is natural. The next term is timbre, which is essentially the flavor profile of the music. Really the character of the frequency response of a system. Now, a lot of people would say, well, what do you mean the frequency response is the speaker responding that? Well, yes, but the system is driving the speaker. They all go hand in hand there.
Say the speaker's driving the speaker?
The system is driving the speaker.
Oh, okay.
The rest of the electronics and the source behind that, so on and so forth, they can all have their unique timbre.
Really important for multi-channel systems that speakers have.
Yes, to match timbre between, let's say, your front speakers and your rear speakers, very important.
Even in the stereo system.
Yep, definitely matching that character of the woofer to the character of the system, or at least the desired
It's like the same in cooking. When you have completely different flavor profiles combined, could be great, could be really weird.
Yep.
Or really bad.
That is very true. Very, very true. The next one's resolution. At the end of the day, a resolving system gives you clarity. It gives you a sort of insight that other systems perhaps seem blurry. They might seem nondescript in their presentation. Resolution gives me that clarity, that sharpness. And over-resolved, I might put that with the analytical and the cold.
Here's a good example.
Yeah.
Like, I tend to experience it with some of the just extremely high dollar systems. Like, the massive carbon fiber horns from ESD Acoustics.
Yeah, the cranes.
And stuff like that. Yeah, the cranes as well, right? You get to a place where a system is so over-resolved that you can't sit down and enjoy Led Zeppelin with it. No. You can't sit down and enjoy even a normal, like a more modern, like Sting music with it.
It would require recordings that are
unbelievable recordings.
unreal, yes.
Perfect recordings. And how many are there? It tends to be only like old classical, in some cases maybe some jazz tracks, stuff like that.
Yep.
But with the super ridiculously resolved systems, with just unbelievable clarity, it can be a bit of a barrier to entry to just enjoying the sound.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's weird because it's like admitting something's better, but it's too good. It's so good that it's actually annoying.
Yep, that's fair. That is very fair. So the next term we have is speed, and speed is typically referred to in the lower frequency registers for bass. It's essentially the opposite of woolly, where woolly, the woofer is not moving accurate to the sound source, where it just gets kind of flabby, and there's not a lot of coherency down there, a lot of resolution down there. Whereas speed is saying, oh, my bass is fast. It's able to hit accurately. It's able to present itself in very high resolution, and you're able to hear instruments down there. Let's say, for example, we're recording an artist playing a double bass. We would be able to hear a lot more information, a lot more data in a speaker that is very fast with its bass presentation, has speed, versus a speaker that does not. A really good example, we actually had to listen today. The Bowers & Wilkins 800 series have very fast bass, very resolved bass, whereas the calf blades that we listened to were still reasonably fast. They're still very good. It just wasn't quite to the level.
They also just didn't have the impact. Like what they did was they remained the coherency. They stopped themselves from being woolly, and stayed pretty fast.
Yes.
But in doing so, like they probably could have tried to get that just oof, impact, right? That
the attack.
Yeah. But they probably would have come off a little woolly had they been tuned that way. At least paired with the Marantz reference gear. We've only really heard them
that
with
is
some
right. And I will say that is relatively warm sounding gear. I mean, even when we heard at the New York Audio Show last November, there was Marantz PM. I think that was the PMKI Ruby.
Oh,
or the
you're
PM10.
talking about with the Polk Legendary series?
Yes, with no. That was with the Marantz processor. I thought there was a second Sound United room, unless I missed.
I thought maybe it was just the Polk Legendary series they used it with.
The Polk Legend series. Yeah, that was a Marantz 8805 and the MM8077.
Oh, there you go.
Full multi-channel set, just being run as a stereo set.
I don't remember
maybe it was the year before then. They had a very high-level Marantz gear. It was either their PM10 reference or the KI Ruby, which is the same thing, just half the power. Even there, it was a very warm sort of sound, and it might have been something that perhaps lacked a bit of speed. But hard to tell on.
I feel like a lot of times
technology speakers.
That does have to do with cabinet. Speaker's ability to.
It certainly could.
Stay
Yes,
fast.
yes, that is very true.
Especially that attack.
Yes, that is fair. So the next one on our list is Prat, P-R-A-T, pace, rhythm, and tempo. Essentially, a speaker's ability to keep rhythm, to keep the proper tempo, to make sure that everything time aligns.
Not Pratt College in Brooklyn?
No. Definitely not. But it's kind of a sort of music that kind of is engaging and exciting, and kind of you want to kind of tap your foot to the song, or in some extreme cases, I guess, break out into song, singing with the music. But
I don't know how extreme that is. I do that all the time.
Oh well, how about that? But yeah, a speaker that has good Pratt, and that's not all of them, by the way. There are a lot of speakers that are just not particularly good with the timing.
No.
So definitely an important term there that we talk about.
I feel like the barrier to entry to a speaker that has great Pratt is when you start singing the music to yourself.
Yeah. Yep, that is
because
definitely fair.
every time a speaker has great Pratt, I'm just jiving.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've even been able to jive with these guys right here, my DM600S3.
You say even, but it's a great sounding speaker.
Well, it is, but it's only $350.
Again, but it doesn't have to be, right?
Well,
it doesn't.
That's fair. It doesn't have to be expensive to have good Pratt.
Correct. Or good anything, really.
That is true. Depth. Depth refers to the sound stage. Essentially, the sound stage extends left and right on a horizontal plane, but it also extends forward and backward. And we talk about the backward extension toward the rear wall.
In my experience, really hard to do.
Yes, good depth.
A lot of speakers,
Yep.
good as they are, can't do it.
A lot of rooms, for that matter, acoustically speaking, simply can't achieve depth.
Sure.
The correct depth, anyway.
I feel like Magnepans tend to do it well. Again, you do have to get them far from the wall, though, for it to sort of happen.
You do.
But there are a number of speakers, great speakers, which don't do it as well. Like, here's a good example, right? I really like the Bowers & Wilkins 700 Series 2s and 702s, right?
702
S2s.
S2s.
Yeah. Also really like the Kef R11s.
Yep.
Both great speakers, similar price point.
Pretty similar, yeah.
Kefs are a little larger,
Yeah,
whatever.
$500 more, I think.
Yeah. But physically somewhat similar, and price-wise pretty similar. I like a lot of the things the Bowers do a little better than those Kefs, but I do think the Kefs actually have a better sense of depth. They do, with similarly, I'll say maybe the Kefs are maybe slightly wider, but they do depth better.
Yeah.
Which is...
I feel like the dispersion characteristics of the 702s are actually a bit superior to the Kefs because the drivers are outside of any kind of cabinet. Well, the tweeter anyway.
And I think they do width a little better for that reason. And they do clarity better, they do Pratt better for me. There's a bunch of things. But I really like the sense of depth you get with the R11s. But there are a million and one speakers that do it. I just find that to be a funny sort of example because it's one of those times where, because depth is hard, I like 702s better in a lot of ways. But there's a speaker that, a lot of speakers that just do it better than others. Doesn't make it the world's best speaker.
Well, no, and you could trade off certain things for depth, so that certainly makes sense. Woolly, we kind of already covered that one, I feel. Impactful. So the notes we kind of put on here were a good representation of the attack, kind of the first part of a note, if you will, and sound that is visceral, kind of really shakes you to the core. That's kind of the impact we're talking about here. Let's see here. Transparent. That's another term there.
I would just say, a speaker's ability to disappear.
Yes, to disappear into the room, and the sound that you're hearing doesn't really sound like it's coming from the speaker at all.
The opposite of that
sounds
I'll say
like
is
it's
boxy.
coming from a point in space. Yes, and the opposite is boxy, where it's very I don't want to say directional, but you can immediately locate the source of sound, and that source of sound is from the speaker itself, not from any other part in the room, even if it should be according to the recording. Definitely good term there. We already kind of covered live sound.
Yeah.
I think we're good there. Coherency. I think we also covered that, but it's simply the distinct separation of sounds. And where it differs from our previous term, imaging, is imaging has everything in the right location.
We covered it.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. But in any case, yes, coherency, that separation of sound. V-shaped. The sound being V-shaped typically refers to a sound that is very bassy and has a lot of treble, but not a whole lot in between.
I'll call that the millennial sound signature.
The millennial sound signature. That's a good one. Yeah, turn up the treble and the bass all the way. Yep. That's fair.
And again, it makes for a fun sound.
Yes, certainly does. And the last term on our list of things to talk about in this part is texture. I really like a sound system that can produce texture. You know, it has this sort of grit. You can kind of feel the silky smoothness of a violin, let's say, or the kind of coarseness of like a lot of plucked strings.
Sure.
You know, or you can feel the different textures.
Sound you can feel.
Yes, sound you can feel. That's a great way of describing texture. Sound you can feel. You know, the double bass playing really kind of kind of shakes you in a certain way.
It's a kind of thing I feel like you'd often feel in like your chest, your ribs. You know.
Yep.
You can kind of texture
feel
to it.
that.
Yeah, it's like a reverberation.
You also feel
100%
around,
on your ears,
around the pinna. Definitely nice there. So that's our audiophile lexicon.
Any particular standouts? Any particular terms you think are most important to understand?
Yeah, I think one of the most important terms to understand is hi-fi. A lot of people mistake hi-fi from high-end, right?
Sure.
High fidelity, again, getting closer to the music. High-end being expensive. And those are two very different things, right? Just because you spend a lot of money on a sound system doesn't mean it's going to sound good. You have to achieve proper synergy, not only in your room, but in your component matching, in your isolation, in where the speaker is placed, so on and so forth. You have to achieve that synergy one way or another, and that sort of synergy, that high fidelity that you end up getting as a result of the synergy is really what's going to be really make your system sound awesome and live and just lifelike, I guess, at the end of the day.
100%.
I would say that's probably, for me, the biggest term on there. Obviously, there are a bunch of other terms that are really good. What are your thoughts?
You know, I didn't even have a real answer to that on my mind. Hi-fi is a really, really good answer.
Yeah. It's kind of like, what does it mean to be an audiophile? You know, it's a similar sort of thing, but in this case, we're talking about how a system sounds.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think Pratt's important to me to understand.
Yeah, definitely.
And to not only understand what it means, but understand the value of it. That just because a speaker maybe has a bunch of good things about it, or even kind of a bunch of bad things about it.
Yep.
That it can still be fun.
Absolutely.
You can still have a ton of fun with a speaker if it's got good Pratt.
Yep.
Yeah. Even though maybe it's not the most resolving, maybe it is a little woolly. Maybe it does not do depth the most amazing.
Yeah.
But you can get your foot tapping and you can have fun. Whether it's an expensive or an inexpensive speaker, whether it does a lot of things right or a lot of things wrong, you can still just kind of jive.
Definitely.
All right, that wraps up part 1 of the first episode of the Finer Things podcast. Thanks for watching. Stick around, and in a second, we'll be back with part 2 with a different beverage, different cigar, and a different topic to talk about.
Welcome back, guys, to this episode of The Finer Things.
Episode number 1.
Episode number 1. Absolutely.
If you're enjoying this, give us a like, subscribe, tap that notification bell.
Yeah, the little bell.
Yeah. And then also, just hop down in the comments. Tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Tell us that everything we believe forever and all time is bad. It's whatever.
Yes.
But, so second part of the video, different beverage, different cigar, and different topic of discussion.
Yes, indeed.
What beverage are we going to be, or beverages, sort of, we going to be enjoying?
Yes, so we'll be enjoying a gin and tonic, but in the not-so-classical fashion, and it's because of our gin and our tonic in this particular case. So the gin we have here front and center, that is the Hendrick's Midsummer Solstice. Hendrick's is already a very unique gin.
Regular Hendrick's, a lot of black black pepper. The juniper sort of takes a center stage, as opposed to with a lot of other gins.
Yes.
A little bit more, also a little bit less sweet.
Yeah, that's very true. Hendrick's, though, it's very unique amongst different gins already, because Hendrick's is distilled in Scotland. A lot of gins are distilled in England. At least the traditional
London
gins.
dry gin.
Right, exactly. Hence where it comes from. So Hendrick's is very, very different. Rose and cucumber tend to be the defining botanicals of this particular gin. Definitely peppery, as you were saying. But this is not only just Hendrick's. This is the Hendrick's Midsummer Solstice, which is where they have these incredible floral influences on their already unique gin.
Yeah, a lot of elderflower, I want to say, is what sort of takes...
Elderflower is definitely a big thing
in addition there. Really just fantastic. And Fentiman's, talk to me about it.
Fentiman's tonic water, some of the best tonic water I've ever had in my entire life.
Yeah, and look, nothing against, like, traditional, what's that sort of, like, really cheapo brand? Polar, or there's a few others. Schweppes, Q-Tonic, Fever Tree.
Yep, Fever Tree.
All good.
Definitely.
Was not the most giant fan of Trader Joe's tonic.
Oh, no.
Little odd.
No. Yeah, very strange.
Yeah, but Fentiman's, super flavorful. Not the sweetest in the world. Not as sort of syrupy as maybe like the Polar or the Schweppes.
It's a natural sort of sweetness.
Yeah. It's a lot less of the fructose corn syrup sort of flavor profile. Not to health purposes here, but just flavor profile, mouthfeel, stuff like that.
Yep, definitely more complex, more organic.
Yeah, and this particular pairing is just
it's fabulous.
Something. We both, every time we're like 25% into a bottle of Hendrick's Summer Solstice, are like, better buy 2 more. I feel like at any one time the two of us have like 4 to 6 bottles on hand.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Yeah,
I think right now we have 5 bottles
something
total
like
on
that.
hand.
Yeah, which is just hilarious.
Yep.
You bought 2, I bought 1, and we had 2 already. Yeah, 5 on hand. But it's just because it's that good, and because it has been marketed as a bit of a limited release.
Yes.
My assumption is it is going to go away.
Yes. Actually, one of the liquor stores that we visited today didn't even have Summer Solstice. All-Star.
All-Star. Yeah, didn't have any more.
So we had to go to Empire to get that.
Well, great liquor store in the capital region.
Yep. Absolutely, for sure. Okay, so let's get the jig. Let's make ourselves some Hendrick's and tonic.
Cool piece together.
Thank you.
What kind of proportion? Very fancy. What kind of proportions do you tend to prefer?
So, preference obviously is a subjective thing. What I end up doing is one of the large shots, and then the rest in tonic water. If I'm really feeling spicy, I'll do 2.
Yeah, 2.
I'll do 2. Yeah.
There
crazy,
we are.
crazy.
Let's do 1 today.
Okay, well we'll do 1 today.
Okay. We do have an appointment, a reservation, as it were, at a restaurant with some friends after this.
We do. That is true.
So we may cut, or will cut, our second segment here a little shorter than the first. So let's go ahead, and while you're doing that, I'm going to introduce our smoke, right? That's our beverage. Our second smoke is this guy right here. World-renowned Padron, phenomenal stuff. Very sort of, a little bit smaller than some of the gigantic cigar, manufacturing outfits. Crafted by hand. Smells fantastic. Also kind of a medium body. Don't want something that's going to overpower something like this, like a gin and tonic. But also want something that is going to play nicely with the flavor. And I think that this was we'll see. But perhaps might be quite a nice pairing. Maybe won't be though. Let's find out. What topic are we going to be discussing, Nick?
So today's topic is going to be the era of the automobile, as we so titled it. Basically talking about our what we feel are the most significant cars of a particular decade.
But also, I guess,
in automobile production.
A decade of our selection as
Yes.
our sort of favorite decade.
Yes, that is definitely fair. So that's kind of our topic for discussion. Let's hop back real quick for this gin and tonic,
Oh, yeah.
which I'd like to have a taste.
First, yeah.
Yes, cheers.
Oh. Just superb. Just superb.
It's so good.
I don't even know what else to say about it. Oh, I can burn there.
Really, really fabulous. The tonic water has a wonderful intensity to it, and the floral nature of the Hendrix
Give me a moment.
just really kind of blends with it really, really fantastically. Really, really well. Just can't complain about that.
Not at all.
Got Ahmed here to start my cigars for me.
That's the only reason he has me over.
That's it. Yep. And not because of this channel or anything. Not because he's actually a very good friend of mine, but just to start my cigars. Really, really excellent. Ooh.
Peppery.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's coming off.
You get a strong pepper note out of that for sure.
100%.
It pulls easier. Is that because of the larger diameter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Larger diameter, longer tube overall.
Yep.
That's why you're not able to pull a huge amount of air through it right away. That's what it's a shorter breath
Yep.
that you're pulling.
Yep. No, that is definitely fair.
That'll get a little bit of a sturdier pull as we smoke through it a bit.
Good. All right, so we're just getting started here.
Yeah, 100%. Pepper sort of remains as you take a sip of the gin and tonic again.
Oh, it sure does.
Yeah.
Wow. That spice, that pepper.
Reminiscent
is really...
to regular Hendrix.
Yes.
Yeah.
The floralness still remains. It is laid back. It
Yep.
is subdued. But it's definitely still there. And the cigar, if you let it go into the finish, it does kind of play with the gin and tonic a bit. There's like... I don't know what to say about that. It is some kind of a medium warmth. Not sure what flavor that ends up being.
They play really nicely together.
They sure do.
The botanicals, the sort of perfumed nature of the summer solstice.
Definitely perfumed. That's really a great way to describe it.
But it plays nicely with the spiciness of the cigar.
Very playful pen.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Anyway.
Yes,
so,
getting to the age of the automobile.
What era of automobile sort of resonated with you?
So for me, it was the 1960s. The 1960s really kind of, for me, was one of the most significant decades in production of
Maybe that's because that's when you were growing up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm turning 70 now.
But,
No.
But, yeah, no, definitely a cool era. Definitely super interesting. I think a lot of people, not even just car enthusiasts, will see a 60s era car and just be like,
Yep.
wow. There was something to car design.
There certainly
at that
was.
time.
Yeah, they definitely had they had their curves, and it was before the super boxy sort of styled cars, and you had a lot of really great cars during that era. But what decade did you choose, Ahmed?
I liked so many different cars. I tend to err on the side of, if it's really weird, I probably like it. Which is, yes. And so a lot of interesting, cool cars, to me, came out of the 1990s.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. There's a lot of cool cars then.
I think, historically, they're just starting to become like pretty cool and retro, as opposed to just like an old car.
Yeah.
And I think it is an era of stepping back into sometimes really bad, sometimes meaningful designs. The 90s was such a mixed bag.
Yep.
I think a lot of companies made some wrong decisions, but I also think a lot of really cool stuff. And one thing I think that's really awesome is that the 1990s, in my mind, is the last sort of decade, the last era where old school cars really were still having a big effect on car design, car production, and what people bought.
Well, that's fair.
A ton of different vehicles had a lot of reminiscence to older vehicles. And I think going into the 2000s, especially going into the 2010s, not to say that one was so much better than the other, but to say though that going into the new millennium, a lot of the traditional sort of car values, car designs were abandoned.
That's fair.
And I think the 90s is kind of special. It's where the computerization met the analog, where the small car met the big fat luxury sedan, where luxury sedans started being phased out for SUVs.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
What that brings me to is the Lincoln Navigator.
Okay.
Because, what is that? Well, that's really the first family luxury SUV.
Definitely. I remember when it came out, that was before the Cadillac Escalade, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so.
Yeah, that was the first. And obviously GM was right on Ford's coattails at that point. And they introduced one, I believe it was 1 year after the Navigator debuted.
That was looking back on it, though, the Navigator does aesthetically hold up better than the first generation Escalade. First generation Escalade
it looks like a GM car, you know?
It looks so
It's kind of funny, yeah. It does look strange.
But the first generation Navigator, it still does have a little bit of nuance in design.
It does, yes. Because, it's make it typical GM where they kind of basically take one car and bring it up their various brands.
Design it for the now.
Right. And they end up looking very similar. For example, a GMC...
Suburban?
No, that's a Chevy Suburban. But
they make both. At the time, they made a GMC Suburban as well.
Very good. I was thinking the Yukon XL.
I think that's smaller than the Suburban. I don't remember.
No, the Yukon is
the
their
largest.
biggest.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
So whether they chose to brand it as a Suburban or a Yukon,
whatever.
Because they redid naming
a bunch of times.
A bunch of different times. But at the time, I believe it was the Yukon XL and the Yukon that the Escalade and the Escalade ESV were based off
the platform release.
Yeah, that is correct. And they ended up looking very similar. Once you got past the Cadillac grille and kind of signature design,
some lines were a little different.
Exactly.
But
the Navigator, that was definitely a significant car of the '90s for sure.
The first. Well, it started a trend that's still huge today. That car kind of defines the next 30 years of automotive history, in a sense.
Yeah, I can see that.
Definitely defines the 90s.
Yeah.
Big, chunky opulence.
Yep, that is definitely for sure there. The overabundance, the cup runneth over sort of
wanting
lifestyle.
to feel like the king of the road, wanting to sit a foot above everybody else on the road.
Yep.
Kind of started there.
Yep. That is fair. At least for the mainstream anyway, because you had things like the Lamborghini LM002
LM006
is something like that.
Yeah. But come on, man, this is not.
No. I'm just saying, SUVs existed
Lamborghini
before,
won't even acknowledge that. They call the Urus their first SUV.
Yeah. Well, that is fair. That
might
is
have been
fair.
002 or 06, I don't remember.
I think it's the 002.
002. Oh, okay. Yeah. What a weird Lamborghini.
Oh yeah, very
Hummer.
very strange. Impractical sort of thing. For me, as far as the 1960s are concerned, the first car that I wrote down was the Jaguar E-Type. And Enzo Ferrari actually said about the Jaguar E-Type that it was one of the most beautiful cars he had ever seen. The curves on that vehicle, you could get.
You might call that the perfect car.
Yeah, you could get a V12.
Yeah.
Really, absolutely incredible.
And that
maybe
V12,
not the most reliable,
Yeah, the most reliable Jaguar.
Yeah.
It's like the fastest bicycle.
That's fair. Yeah, most Jaguars are pretty darn unreliable, and then the E-Type is the least unreliable of that bunch.
Far more of a function.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
what a beautiful car, though.
Aesthetically, you might call that the perfect car. I don't know that cars get too much more beautiful than that.
That is fair. There are some very nice looking cars, but the E-Type is really the quintessential
car,
good looking sports car.
Just
really,
if you want to,
I'd say some Aston Martins actually get pretty close.
Sure.
In my humble opinion.
But if you want to look cool,
yeah,
there's not too many better ways to do it.
That is very true. That is very true indeed. E-Type's very cool. What'd you pick for the next car?
What did I? Let's check the notes here.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so the Supra.
The Toyota Supra, yes.
Yep. I mean, come on.
Motor.
Look, if I didn't... a lot of cars came to mind. I'm not a huge 90s Japanese sports car guy.
Yeah.
Not that I'm opposed to them, per se.
I mean, I saw the Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, exactly. Nissan Skyline GTR, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Godzilla. Yeah. But I'd be remiss if I didn't include one. And I think the Toyota, that legendary 2J...
That was a defining car of the 90s.
Yeah, 100%.
For sure.
So, especially in America. Now, again, had we sort of talked about worldwide... we might say the GTR.
Yeah, the GTR would be more defining, but
not really in America.
In America, the Toyota Supra that was a heck of a car. And the 2JZ motor, the 3-liter twin turbo, absolutely legendary.
Still sought after.
Oh yeah, certainly. There are a lot of people who do
the car modification community.
Yes, where they do 2JZ swaps into whatever random car, and it's always epic.
The 2JZ and the Chevrolet LS design. These are the two. These are the quintessential.
That's that's good. That's good. All right, so the next car that I picked was the Toyota 2000 GT. So this is kind of my Japanese sports car contribution of this particular list. And the Toyota 2000 GT is, in my humble opinion, one of the best looking Toyotas that was ever made. It just, the curves on the car, the way that it was proportioned, it was really quite beautiful. And I guess I'll reveal my millennialism by saying that I discovered this car on Gran Turismo.
Yeah.
Where that was an available car to use, and the way the thing looks, and if it presumably drives anything like on the Gran Turismo game, then it drives damn well for a 1960s car. Really, really fabulous. Where a lot of 1960s like muscle cars, for example, didn't have very good brakes at all. They just went in a straight line.
Great in a straight line. Yeah, great in a straight line.
The Toyota 2000 GT was more of a handling sort of vehicle, almost German in that sort of sense, because the German cars are typically
the rigidity.
They have that nice rigidity to them, which lends really well to handling as well. Of
course.
So I really can't complain there. What we got next, now, man?
I would say the BMW E34 M5.
E34 M5. Wow, what a car!
That's just, it's one of the
Oh, my
ones
goodness.
where it's like, if I tomorrow have unlimited funds, I do go out and get one.
Yeah. I would totally have one of those in my stable for sure.
It's the last, just, to me, not the last, but one of the last, absolutely gorgeous BMWs.
Oh, for sure.
It is also, and the 1990s is big on this, kind of the tail end of automotive companies running long production cycles of vehicles.
Yes, for sure.
Cars
Where
that
a manufacturer would
start
spend
in the
10
80s,
years,
yeah.
right? Have a 10-year difference in
Correct.
in lifespan. The Mercedes are known for that
Yeah.
as well, having that really, really long life between one model.
See,
and
the
next.
SEL is what, from 76 to 89 or
Yeah,
something?
something like
560
that.
SEL,
Yeah,
something
it's
crazy like that.
Pretty crazy, pretty insane. And,
but-
and then the SL series started in 1990, ended in 2000, I believe, or 2001.
Yep.
It was a pretty crazy life cycle as well, and that's where they essentially believed in designing things once and right the first time, and not really making any changes because it's already a winning formula.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. And we've kind of gotten away with that with modern automobiles, where it's kind of expected of automakers
Every couple of years
do a refresh or a complete redesign.
It's like, oh, they've been manufacturing that car for 6 years.
Yeah. That's really long.
Yeah.
That's long in the
Why would you even buy it anymore?
Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
exactly. Because it worked the first time?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So, no, the E34 M5 also featured in the movie Ronin, by the way. A really great movie with Robert De Niro there. And there was a chase scene involving that car, and manual transmission, of course, which was not quite the next generation, but the next generation after that really got into the sequential manual gearbox. The E60 M5s, for example, had that single clutch automated gearbox, as opposed to the traditional manual transmission, where you could really feel what you were doing with the car.
100%.
Really great linkage on that car.
And when we talk about the M5, obviously that's the the pinnacle of the E34.
It is. But they also did a 525. A 530, which was a 3-liter V8, very unique motor there. They did a 535, which is the 3.5-liter inline-six, the 540, which is a 4-liter V8, and then the E39 M5 was, depending on the year, a 3.6 or a 3.8-liter inline-six engine, good for up to, I want to say, 280 or 290 horsepower, which at the time was very, very
Big
good.
number, yeah.
Very big number there.
One thing to say, looking back on a lot of these cars, you look at a high-performance car from the 1950s or 1960s or even 1970s, they kind of have like the same performance numbers as a modern Nissan Maxima.
Yeah. Which is
because
particularly
times-
amazing.
Yeah.
All those redesigns have definitely come to a benefit.
And so when we talk, people talk about like the 1965 Shelby GT. I think that thing had like 400 horsepower.
Something like that, which
is
still
a
a respectable
lot. It's
amount.
still a lot.
But you can get that in a sedan, in
Correct.
a family
Yeah.
sedan, for that matter.
You can get the R63 Mercedes-Benz minivan AMG, with
507 horsepower.
Yeah,
something like
507.
that.
Yeah, something it's ridiculous. Yeah,
It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's
absolutely
I love
insane.
what Mercedes is doing with the AMG badge these days.
Really, really
kind of
awesome.
kind of slapping it on a lot of things, which feels like a bit of bastardization.
Yep.
But they're also making fast minivans.
Yeah, that
which
is true.
Although I don't know about modern, but whatever.
Well,
you get my point. G55,
anyway, yeah. Geländewagen, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Something that big has no business being that fast, but it's cool anyway.
Certainly, and actually the GT500 Eleanor, as it were, is on my list of the most influential cars of the 1960s.
That's funny. I didn't even think about that when I mentioned
I
it.
know.
Yeah. That's so funny. It was just an example.
Yeah.
Cool, amazing car. Oh my god.
Definitely. Oh my goodness. If you just watch the movie Gone in 60
Yeah,
seconds.
exactly.
It's absolutely epic.
Just the definition of gorgeous.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like the most beautiful looking muscle car ever. I would argue, certainly. You really don't get much better than that.
To argue again, I like the Chevy Chevelle a lot.
Yeah, Chevelle's nice. Yeah, that's more of a, call it a traditional, whereas the GT500 is sporty,
fastback.
Yeah.
Very
Very
design.
different.
Although I
Not
do
5,000 pounds.
Really, yeah. Or even like the Hemi Cuda, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, big.
Yeah.
Blower motor on that thing.
Eats you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Eats you for breakfast.
Yeah. So next, 1990s car.
Yes.
What the heck did I write down? Oh, okay. So the McLaren, what is it? FL.
F1.
F1. Oh gosh.
McLaren F1.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. Yeah.
Jeez. Guess you can't read my handwriting on the list.
There's a reason. It's a reason. It's one of the most sought after cars.
Yes, it worth an incredible amount of money, tens of millions of dollars.
$20 million.
I think the last one sold at 20 something.
I like the video Doug DeMuro, great car YouTuber, made with Jay Leno, because who has one?
Yes,
and just the last or one of the last, but probably the last absolute hypercar performance type vehicle with manual transmission.
Yep. That is definitely fair, because you look at the cars that are beyond the McLaren F1. The Ferrari F50 had come out the same year. That was also a manual gearbox. Yep. So those were kind of some of the last.
Ferrari, dual clutch. Yeah.
Oh yeah, dual clutch, and then the Enzo Ferrari, same deal where you had the paddle shifters. Yeah. I think there was also a dual clutch 7-speed manual transmission. And the Enzo Ferrari, that's an icon for its time. But getting back to the McLaren F1. It's kind of like an all-time icon. Oh, yeah. Three-seater. So weird. The only other time I saw that was there was a Ferrari from, I believe it was late 60s, early 70s in the Saratoga Automobile Museum. That was three-seater like that, where the driver's position was in the middle, and then the passengers were kind of a row back, or maybe a half row back, that were kind of further back, so the driver could get in relatively easily. It's kind of impractical, though, because then the driver has to reach really far over to close the door.
Yeah,
it's definitely unique.
Yeah, I think practicality was a really big part of the design for the McLaren F1. Absolutely.
No, certainly not. Of course, they're looking at raw performance numbers, and they certainly have it. On a track, the McLaren F1 is magic. Yeah. Absolute magic.
Insane car.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely insane.
Definitely one of the finer things.
You don't say. Yeah. How about that? But yes, definitely, perhaps even one of the finest things.
yeah, maybe. Maybe.
In fairness, obviously the Corvette. The Corvette is one of the
split window.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If we're talking 60s.
Oh, definitely, we're talking 60s.
Yeah.
That was a very influential car of the 1960s in terms of its design, in terms of what type of performance characteristics for an American car.
I mean, also look, there are cultural and social significances outside of just the automotive industry, and if you think about its connection to the Apollo 11 mission, where or is that Apollo 1?
Apollo 11 was the one that crashed and burned.
Oh, yeah. Not a connection to the Apollo 11 mission. Well, its relation to the 1960s and the 1960s, huge cultural significance in relation to landing a man on the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so huge cultural and social impact there.
For the Corvette, yes.
For the Corvette. To the space mission, to lots of different things. We've been neglecting our gin and tonics a bit, I feel.
Not at all.
Just an outstanding flavor.
Really, really fantastic. Yes.
Good pairing. I obviously you're always, unless you're really familiar with the flavor profiles, you're always kind of rolling the dice pairing anything, right?
Yeah.
But in this
really
case,
have to know how they taste. But this is just a fantastic pairing.
Worked out to be great.
Yeah, they really go great with each other here.
Yeah. The black pepper, the spiciness, and the just sort of great tobacco flavor is playing super well with the gin and tonic. And again,
absolutely,
to me, really making the summer solstice kind of taste like regular Hendrix. But with the addition of the elderflower and a bit more botanical.
Yep, definitely, for sure.
Pretty cool.
So let's see here. The last car that you picked there, is that a Rolls Royce?
Yeah, the Silver Spur.
Silver Spur. All right, tell me a bit about that car.
Look, I think this is one, again, the 1990s big luxury cars. There's some of the last that are just, they wouldn't have looked out of place in the 60s or 70s. It would have made sense.
Some of the old Jags are like that.
Yeah, 100%. Even some of like the early 2000s Jags are like that. And again, gorgeous, beautiful nightmares.
Yep.
But the cooler a car is, the more likely it is to burn oil. And to
That's why I drive BMW.
Yeah. But no, it's you know you've made it in life when you have to carry around a jug of liquid Molly.
A jug. I have a 5-liter jug. How about that?
Yeah. No, but there's something cool about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, though. So
Silver Spur. So the Silver Spur is one of those last great
big
luxury
grill, a nice swoopy back, sort of the classic Rolls-Royce design. Super isolated interior. You get those gorgeous wood finish everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Supple leather everywhere.
Ooh,
you
Connolly
get those,
hides. Connolly hides, the people who did for Rolls-Royce leather, they closed rather recently.
Who are they?
Well, I say recently, I mean like 2007, 2008, right around the economic recession there.
Sure.
They had been around for hundreds of years, and they were supplying for the entire time Rolls-Royce leather. And now they're no longer here to produce that, which is a real shame. So, the Silver Spur, one of the last generations of Rolls-Royce that really got to benefit from the extra suppleness of that Connolly hide.
Yeah, no, it's a special vehicle. Really the embodiment of, again, similar to the E34 there, the changing from the old guard to the new guard, from the old style to the new style.
Yeah, because the E39 was certainly a big departure from the E34.
Yeah, and again, not to say that it was not a great vehicle.
No, certainly not, but definitely a great departure.
100%. And the other thing about the Rolls-Royce there, it's one of the last, and it's kind of funny to talk about it positively, but it's one of the last Rolls-Royce that doesn't give a damn about power or speed or handling.
Yep, that is true.
You know what the horsepower was? Adequate. That's what they say. And
that is true.
I love that because I love that you focus just on absolutely extreme attention to detail, absolutely extreme comfort, and luxury. That's what they were after. That's what they achieved. Not to say that the Continental or the Phantom or the Bentley Arnage, were not amazing.
Yeah, Arnage, that was a similar generation there.
Arnage was more early 2000s. And then if we're talking about the Arnage also turbo, that starts to be where, again, Bentley was always seen as the more sportier.
Starting with the Bentley
Rolls-Royce.
Blower for that matter.
Yeah, exactly. And I forgot, what's the 90s sister or brother, whatever, to the Silver Spur from Bentley? I can't remember. It might just be the Turbo R.
Yeah, it might be the Turbo R before they took on the
Arnage
name there. Yeah, that makes sense.
Anyway, whatever.
Really something.
Yeah.
The Rolls-Royce, very classic beauty. Very 100%. Imposing car. Very large.
Oh, yeah. It's, again, man, picnic tables. That's my closing remark.
Yeah, picnic tables. Oh, gosh. And the 7 Series the E38 stole those picnic
tables.
100%. Yeah. Really amazing there. In any event, so my last sort of pick for this is the Ferrari 250 GTO, which they started producing in 1962. Very, very fast car. It was a 4-liter, 300 horsepower V12 with a 5-speed manual transmission, and
for the 1960s.
Yes, for the 1960s,
that
which is just
ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Now, this would have been
small, light car as well.
This would have been the sort of current Ferrari around the time of the whole, Ford v Ferrari 24 hours at Le Mans.
Ford versus Ferrari, I believe so. I don't know if they use the exact 250 GTO car.
Well, not at Le Mans, but yeah.
Well, maybe they did though, because GTO in Italian, GTO stands for Gran Turismo Omologato. That's the word I'm looking for. Sorry, my Italian's very bad. But yes, Gran Turismo Omologato, which is a homologation special. They had to make a certain amount of these 250 GTOs in order to qualify for particular racing segments.
Stunning looking vehicle.
Yes,
Just
extremely stunning.
Curves,
the curves, the triple
lines.
vents up front, which you could cover or remove depending on what your intentions were there. And that Colombo V12, that it was quad carbureted, I believe. Really, really fabulous there.
Yeah. No, it's Enzo getting a little older.
Yep.
At that time.
A little bit.
Yeah.
His last commission was the F40 in 1987.
Yep.
But certainly that was in his more mature years.
Sure.
At Ferrari, they started in the late 40s. I believe it was 48 or 49.
Yep.
At that point, Enzo had transitioned from working at Alfa Romeo to doing his own thing. And then through the 50s, they made some really fabulous cars, actually, like the Testarossa,
sure.
For example, was a really good one. But the 60s is really where they got into their own, where they made something like the 250 GTO, the 250 California, the 250 SWB. That whole 250 series really is
kind of set the tone for the next 40, 50 years.
Definitely of Ferrari, absolutely, no doubt. I feel like that was the beginning of an era there. That was kind of the origin of Ferrari's true excellence.
Right around the time, I believe, that Fiat purchased Ferrari, I think was around the time of that vehicle.
In the 60s?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fair. Well, Fiat made a very good investment then.
Sure.
Everybody knows Ferrari the world around,
Again, some of this information is coming
It's a
to me in my
household
mind
name.
from the Ford v Ferrari film, which came out recently.
I did not see that. I
a
really
lot
want
of
to see
fun.
that.
Yeah, Christian Bale and Matt Damon. Super fun movie. Really highly recommended, actually. But whatever, my point is, a lot of the stuff that I kind of mentioned is featured as part of the plot.
I'll have to get that when it comes out on Blu-ray.
Yeah. But I think
we've done it.
I think we covered a lot of what we kind of set out to.
Yeah, definitely.
Look, guys, we're gonna finish up these cigars. We're gonna finish up these gin and tonics. We're gonna head out to a lovely dinner with some friends, actually.
Absolutely.
But it was great hanging out with you guys. Look, if you like the content, go ahead and subscribe. Tap that notification bell. Leave a comment. Let's have a discussion. Give some input. Tell us your favorite car errors, your favorite cars. What kind of cigars you pair with certain champagnes or cocktail, beverages.
Yes, any kind of mixed drinks. Champagne with mixed drinks.
Yeah.
Or your beverage of choice with certain cigars. Right?
100%.
Absolutely.
Anyhow, guys, thanks for watching. Really enjoyed our time together. I think we had a fantastic conversation here.
Oh yeah, really.
I love what we did for the audiophile lexicon definition. I had a ton of fun talking about cars. Watch out maybe for our next piece of content. I'd like to do another audiophile lexicon sort of part 2 where we define hi-fi components.
Yes.
I think that's something where a lot of people maybe do have some questions, maybe do need some clarification, or just like sort of hearing from one audiophile, two audiophiles, to some others. To another. What opinions, thoughts are. But otherwise, I think we're signing off.
Alrighty.
All right.
Absolutely we are. Have a great night.
Have a great night.